Hi, today is Thursday, March 23rd, 2017. It's the fourth day of the fourth week of Lent, and this is a Swede Speaks. The perpetrator in London has now been identified. He's identified as a 52-year-old British-born citizen named Khalid Masood. He is supposedly a lone wolf, although he was probed by the MI5 some years ago. And earlier today, there was also a story coming out about, I think it was in Belgium, where they had arrested someone who was planning a terror attack. And have you thought about that? Yesterday, when the attack in London happened, it was exactly 1 year after the Brussels attack. Could this be a coincidence? Maybe. And yesterday, I was careful. I did not want to say that this was Islamic terrorism, although I strongly suspected it. And they are now trying to say that this is a lone wolf. Yeah, maybe he is. But where did he get his ideas? And in a few other things I could mention too is that we got this Erdogan situation, and Erdogan recently said that Europeans won't walk free in any streets or on any streets in the world. Well, that's the truth. He was just stating a fact. But Erdogan has declared war on Europe, or he has declared war on non-Muslim Europe. And he is sort of counting on Muslim Europeans to be his fifth column, to be his Trojan horse, to beat down the European culture, the Western civilization. And Norway recently granted asylum to a Turkish diplomat and a few Turkish NATO soldiers who refused to return back to Turkey because they were afraid what would happen because the Turkish regime thought they had connections to the coup last summer. So, as far as I know right now, I actually support that Norway is granting asylum to these people, but we should, as always, be careful. We should vet everyone extremely carefully. And the thing is, I could go through what's happening around the world. I could state the simple facts, and I do that. But I also have to comment on the reasons for why things are happening. And I saw actually two videos with Tommy Robinson. One video was, or both were on Rebel Media, which I think is a great channel, so I recommend that channel too. And in one video he was on the streets of London talking about how this was an imported problem. This is the West has imported Islam, and now we're facing this problem. And people were laughing at him because they don't see what's going on. He sees it. I see it. I think most of the people watching this video see it too, but lots of people are just closing their eyes to this. You know, it's like the three monkeys. See nothing, hear nothing, say nothing, and things will be all right. But that's not how it works. Because if we should take Islam first, I heard of a Christian living in Sweden. He's of Middle Eastern origin. He came to Sweden. He's got asylum in Sweden, and he has lived in Sweden for many years now. And he said to a friend of mine when they discussed this conflict with Islam, and my friend tried with, but you can't just blame Islam. It's socioeconomic factors, etc., etc., etc. You know, and my friend was sort of trying to play devil's advocate to see what this guy was going to say. And this guy, mind you, a Middle Eastern Christian, came to Sweden as an adult, I think, but anyway, just simply stated, everywhere where you get a significant Muslim population, there are problems. He stated that it's a simple fact, and that's true, because I think Europeans, or Westerners, but Europeans in general, at least Western, they really need to study history. And I'm not talking about the politically correct history you might get spoon-fed, because we are spoon-fed so much in Europe, or at least in Western Europe. We are spoon-fed political correctness more or less from the day we're born. And I'm not talking about influence from parents here. It could be that too. But I mean especially through the entire education system, through the media. It might get a little better now, because now a guy with a webcam and a microphone, you're looking at him, can actually do something to improve the world, if nothing else, to get people thinking, to get another perspective out. But I digress. Anyway, there's so much we have been spoon-fed, which just needs to be attacked, and it has to be disproven. So let's take Islam, the real story. In short, I'm not going to give you the full lecture. I can give a link to that too, but this will be the short version. Muhammad was a warlord. He was a murderer, he was a thief, he was a pedophile, he was all these terrible things and lots of other stuff. He was a rapist. Well, I suppose so, at least. I can't even imagine that 9 or 12-year-old Aisha really wanted to go to bed with him. I think he forced himself on her. But anyway, and he is, according to Islam, the perfect human being, the one who is not to be criticized. And the Quran, according to Islam, is given directly from God. It didn't go through any prophets. Muhammad recited it. As far as I know, he couldn't read, he couldn't write. So other people had written it down after. That's why there are different versions of the Quran, something that most Muslims are happily unaware of. But there were different versions of the Quran until they decided on the right version. And the Muslim world has been at war with its neighbors, with the rest of the world, since the days of Muhammad. And the Muslim world has also been infighting between Sunnis and Shia, and everyone's on the Ahmadiyya. That's why when people tell you that the Islamic State, for instance, when they tell you that the Islamic State are killing other Muslims, yes, they are. But the Islamic State do not consider these people Muslims. They consider them kuffar, which means heathens or disbelievers. And Westerners may know the story about how the Iberian Peninsula was Islamized. They might have heard about how good everything was. Well, it wasn't. Christians and Jews were second and third class citizens. They were happy that they were even alive. It was terrible. It's no wonder that eventually they actually threw the Muslims out. And when they had gotten control of the entire peninsula, they wouldn't allow any Muslim to live there. I don't blame them. And you might know that the Turks conquered the Balkans, Bulgaria, the Balkans, and a large part of Eastern Europe. They got all the way to Vienna. And let me tell you this. The Crusades, for which Christians have been apologizing for generations now, that is nothing to apologize about. You shouldn't be ashamed about this. They were a just defensive war. Yes, of course, some things were done that shouldn't have been done. There were some mistakes. There are always mistakes in wars, and I am not defending that. But I am defending that the Christian civilization finally started hitting back, started defending themselves after the fall of Constantinople, after Rome was sacked, after Christian Egypt fell. You do know that the Christian Copts are the native population of Egypt, right? And the other ones are more or less just some kind of invaders. You do know this. You do know that the Middle East was Christian before Muhammad came. You know this. right? Okay, have you heard about what happened in India? Have you heard about the Indian genocide? No, it was not done by the British. It was done by the followers of Islam, who massacred Indian natives because they refused to follow Islam. And do you know that there has been violent conflicts between Muslims and other people in Thailand? Do you know this? Have you thought about that almost all the terror you hear about in the West, and also in some other places, don't forget Nairobi, the shopping center there. Have you thought about how it's never radical Christians, it's never radical Jews, it's never radical Hindus or Buddhists or atheists? And yes, I know there is one or two people considered radical Christians who might attack an abortion clinic in the United States. I know this might happen. First of all, when this is done, they are doing it in spite of the teachings of Jesus Christ, not in accordance with them. While when violence is done in the name of Islam, they are following the Quran, they are following the Hadiths, and they are following Muhammad's own example. And that is the outer enemy, the enemy at the gates, threatening Western civilization. And not only Western civilization, they are threatening every civilization that they attack. And you could say that Muslim immigrants to Sweden or Canada or wherever are usually secular people. They don't believe in so-called political Islam. They aren't Islamists. They may not even know very much about Islam. Islam might just be a cultural thing for them, like when some Swedes or Norwegians only go to church at Christmas. It could be something like that. And yeah, in many cases, that's right. That is absolutely true in many cases. But you are forgetting something. If you say this, you are forgetting something. You are forgetting the second and third generation Muslims who grow up in Western countries as minorities, and they start looking for their own identity. And when the children of Somali or Pakistani or different kinds of Arab immigrants grow up in, say, Sweden or Norway or Canada, and they start looking for their identity, they are not looking for their specific culture, for Pakistani Sufism or something like that. No, they are looking for Islam. They start studying the Quran, and they become radical Muslims. Plus, you got the Western converts, who usually are pretty bad too, because they have to prove they are real Muslims. Okay, but then we also have the problem from within. Because how did this happen? I would like to quote something that a friend of mine wrote on Facebook earlier today. And the quote goes like this: "You deprive a culture of its religious component, and after a few generations you have a culture completely ignorant of the power of religion. So when other religious cultures decide to move in, the non-religious host culture is clueless and will lose their land and go extinct. Is that good for the cultural diversity of humanity? I think not." End quote. And that's how we got to this point. It didn't start by open border policies. That's a consequence. It started actually with liberals and socialists attacking the church, attacking Christianity, mocking Christianity. And I am all for free speech. You should be allowed to mock Christianity. I don't like it, but it should be allowed. I'll let God punish you. I'm not going to do it. You can mock Christianity all day for me. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for your salvation. That's what I'm going to do. And I might call you out on it. But I'm not going to harm you physically. I'm not going to tell anyone else to do it. No matter what. But what's happened is, there are so many things connected with this, but it's how secularism, socialism, liberalism, it all started undermining Christianity. I guess it sort of started with the French Revolution. Then you get Marxism, you get how education was moved from churches to the state, you get how the welfare state made it easier for single parent households. You get how the welfare state also made it easier for you to sort of stop depending on God. You could just depend on the state. And religion just became something from the past, something irrelevant, something you shouldn't care about. And because when I defend Western civilization, I am not defending the nihilist, hedonist, secularist culture that some of it has degraded into. I am defending the Judeo-Christian Western civilization that we got from Athens, from Rome, from Jerusalem. The spiritual and intellectual heritage we got from the antiquity and from the Israelites in its specific Christian form. And I think Europe needs to be rechristened, but that could be the topic of another video. But the thing is, when we are deprived of where we come from, religion or faith is completely irrelevant. And then you have fathers becoming irrelevant, families becoming irrelevant, which is especially in Sweden, where the idea was to make people independent of each other. You shouldn't rely on your husband or your parents or your neighbors. And they really managed to destroy civil society in Sweden, and not only in Sweden, also in Norway and I guess many other European countries. Because you know that churches and faith organizations receive government aid in Sweden and Norway, for instance. And I really think it's destructive, because it means that whoever pays the pianist decides the music. And it's like you got private business, you've got the state, but there's nothing in between. There's no civil society to talk of. And like they say that Swedes love to associate. They have their associations. Yeah, they are heavily government funded too. The press is government funded. Okay, I'm not government funded, but the press is. Mainstream media. There's so much we need to deal with. And you got this political correctness, which has led to the open borders policy, which is contributing heavily to Islamization, which contributes to a culture where you're not supposed to speak up about these things, because then you're ostracized, you are declared a racist, a fascist, and all these terrible things. You're an Islamophobe, the new code word. And if you say something, someone can Google you. They Google you, and you won't get a job. Or you will be fired from the job you got because you said something that you shouldn't have said because it wasn't politically correct. Yeah, and all this combined together, the clash is the clash here. I think Western Europe might very well be lost. I am praying, hoping, and acting for it not to be, but I think it may be. We will see what happens. We'll see what happens in France. Le Pen, I will probably disagree with most of her economic policies. I don't care. I hope she wins anyway. When people complain about President Trump, I am cheering him. When people complained about Viktor Orban, the leader of Hungary, I think he's prime minister, he could be president, I'm not really sure, about the Hungarian system, who is top dog there, if the president is just some ceremonial guy. But Orban, at least, when he closed Hungary's borders, and all the left liberals in Europe were shouting out what a terrible, despicable man he was. And I'm like, hey, he is guarding our border. We should help him. And seriously, Europe. Yeah, maybe Eastern Europe will make it. Western Europe is in a really sorry state. and there is not much time left. So we really need to wise up now. We need Churchills, not Chamberlains. And also, Europe needs to rediscover Christianity, seriously. Because, as I'm saying, the only hope, the only way to resist an Islamic takeover is Christianity combined with traditionalist conservatism backed up by the real will to defend ourselves. And that's what I have to say about this right now. I would like to thank the people who are supporting this channel through prayers and through PayPal and through Patreon. It's all very greatly appreciated. If you like this channel, please subscribe so you don't miss anything. Please share my videos on social networks, on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Please like this video if you like it. If you got something to say, feel free to comment. I read all comments, even the bad ones. And I would also like to encourage you to support this channel. You might have understood that I have made myself sort of unemployable in both Sweden and Norway. Even if I'm not using my real name here, it's still pretty easy to figure out who I am. It is, and I'm not really trying to hide it either. But anyway, so any support, big or small, greatly appreciated. This is A Swede Speaks. Have a nice day.